Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a case that has really held public attention for 2 decades now, the disappearance of Maura Murray.
That's right, February 9th, 2004. She was a 21-year-old nursing student, and she just vanished after a car crash. Route 112, Haverhill, New Hampshire.
Yeah, it's one of those cases that just sticks with you.
Yeah,
Still unsolved.
absolutely. It's truly perplexing, the lack of any clear resolution, all the unanswered questions.
Yeah,
It just keeps fueling speculation and, this real desire for answers.
exactly. So for this deep dive, we've gathered quite a range of sources to, really try and get into the details. We're looking at info from a true crime blog, some historical weather data for Haverhill that night, a really detailed crime timeline, a news piece reflecting on the, wow, 21st anniversary.
41 years, yeah.
A scientific explanation of forensic analysis in car accidents, which could be key. Also, an overview of eyewitness memory reliability,
Always crucial in these cases.
and even a Reddit thread. We looked at one discussing a, let's say, specific theory about the timeline.
Right. And just to be clear, our aim here isn't to endorse any particular theory, especially, the ones that pop up in online discussions.
Definitely not.
Instead, we really want to synthesize the crucial information from all these sources. Basically, our mission is to pull out the key details, the potential insights, so you can maybe develop a clearer picture of what was going on around Maura's disappearance.
Okay, good. So let's begin by looking at Maura herself. Our timeline and the news article tell us she was born May 4th, 1982, in Hanson, Massachusetts.
Right. Fourth of 5 kids, described as a close-knit Irish Catholic family. Her parents divorced when she was young, but apparently both stayed involved.
And what really stands out, I think, is how consistently she's portrayed across the sources. Intelligent, athletic, ambitious.
Definitely. Excelled academically, great at track and cross country in high school. The timeline even notes she set a freshman 3K record. That really speaks to her drive.
Absolutely. And her academics were stellar. Ranked 4th in her high school class, 1420 on the SATs, district mile winner. She got into West Point with a recommendation from Senator Ted Kennedy, which is quite something.
It really is. But she chose West Point over Harvard, interestingly enough.
Yeah, she enrolled there in fall 2000, chemical engineering major. But then she withdrew, transferred to UMass Amherst in January 2002.
Switched majors to nursing, and the timeline adds she had a part-time campus security job there, too.
So it paints a picture of someone bright, capable, but maybe also searching, not afraid to change direction.
Perhaps it suggests independence, maybe even a bit of restlessness, like you said.
Okay, now let's delve into the events leading up to her disappearance. The timeline gives us a lot here. Back in October 2003, October 20th, she was involved in a credit card fraud incident at UMass.
Right, and there was a court hearing scheduled for December 16th. It's a detail that, might offer some insight into potential stressors, maybe her state of mind. We don't know for sure, but it's there.
Then, fast forward to just a few days before she vanished, February 5th, 2004. The news article mentions this. She got really upset during her work shift.
Yeah, after a phone call with her sister. Apparently it was about relationship issues and her sister having relapsed with alcohol.
She was reportedly so distressed she had to be escorted back to her dorm. And that evening, multiple calls with her boyfriend, Bill Rausch.
So clearly some emotional turmoil bubbling up in those days, right before.
The weekend just before February 9th was also pretty eventful. Saturday, February 7th, her dad, Fred Murray, visited, helped her look at cars.
And she borrowed his car that night for a dorm party.
But then, early the next morning, Sunday, February 8th, around 3:30 a.m., she had a minor car accident.
In her dad's car, returning to his motel, damaged the vehicle, police came, tow truck, the whole thing.
She called Bill Rausch right after that happened.
The timeline highlights a lot of activity that Sunday. Fred found out insurance would cover the damage, which must have been a relief. Maura spoke to her sister Julie about the car shopping.
And that was the last time they spoke.
Absurd.
Sad.
Yeah. She also called Reliance Auto, called a friend named Kate, dropped her dad off at his motel late, like 10 p.m., and then was at a friend's dorm room by 11 p.m.
So, yeah, the accident was definitely another stressor, but the day itself seems filled with, practical stuff and connecting with people.
It does. But then we hit Monday, February 9th, and things definitely start to feel different, unusual.
According to the timeline, really early, like after midnight Sunday into Monday morning, she's online searching for directions.
To the Berkshires in Burlington, Vermont.
Yeah, not exactly typical spots for a UMass student midweek, are they?
Not really. Then, 1 p.m., she emails her boyfriend, says she doesn't feel like talking, but she'll call him later.
And just 24 minutes later, 1:24 p.m., she emails her professors and her work supervisor.
Claiming she'd be out of town for a week. The reason? A death in the family.
Which, as the timeline and news article confirm, the family later said was completely untrue.
That's a huge red flag, isn't it? A significant departure from, normal behavior. It suggests a deliberate plan to leave, at least for a while.
And right after sending those emails, 2:05 p.m., she calls about lodging in Stowe, Vermont.
And then at 2:10 p.m., another voicemail for her boyfriend, again promising to talk later. It really feels like she's putting pieces in place for some kind of trip.
The afternoon continues that pattern. 3:30 p.m., she leaves UMass in her car, that black 96 Saturn.
10 minutes later, 3:40 p.m., withdraws $280 from an ATM. Surveillance video apparently showed her alone.
Then sometime that afternoon, she buys about $40 worth of alcohol. Bailey's, Kahlua vodka, box of Frenzio wine.
And again, surveillance reportedly showed her alone, looking, quote, normal and calm.
The last recorded use of her cell phone is 4:37 p.m., checking her voicemail.
So that whole sequence, it really suggests she had a plan in motion. The destination, her actual intentions, still a mystery. But she was actively doing things.
Okay, let's move to that evening, the crash itself. 7:27 p.m. A resident in Woodsville, New Hampshire calls 911.
Reports a car accident on Route 112 right near her house. Describes a black Saturn against a snowbank. Maura's car.
The timeline lines up with this. Then, at 7:43 p.m., this is crucial, a school bus driver, Butch Atwood, stops.
He sees the car, stops, speaks with a young woman, presumably Maura.
And she declines his help, says she already called AAA.
But as the timeline points out, and this is important, she hadn't called AAA, and cell service in that specific spot was apparently poor to non-existent back then.
Right, so that's odd. And then just minutes later, 7:46 p.m., the first police officer arrives.
Finds the car locked, abandoned.
Items found inside.
Yeah.
They add to the puzzle, don't they?
They really do. According to the timeline, her AAA card was there, school books, supplies, that box of Franzia wine, her favorite stuffed animal.
And most of her belongings were still packed in the car.
Right. And crucially, the timeline mentions no footprints in the snow around the car, no signs of a struggle, despite the cold weather.
Which strongly suggests she left the scene voluntarily, walked away from the car herself.
It certainly points that way.
Okay, let's talk witnesses. We mentioned Butch Atwood, the bus driver. Both the timeline and the news article highlight his interaction. He offered help. She refused.
And he called 911 after he got home, a short drive away. We should note, sadly, he passed away back in 2006.
Now, the Reddit thread we looked at, it brings up a pretty specific theory involving him.
Yes. The theory questions the timing of his 911 call. Basically, it speculates about whether he might have, helped Maura hide from the police.
Like sheltered her on his bus or at his house briefly. Maybe helped her leave the area to avoid a potential DUI, given the alcohol in the car.
That's the gist of the speculation online. Kind of a grandfatherly figure helping her out of a jam.
But as you'd expect, the Reddit commenters themselves raise some issues with that.
Oh, definitely. People point out the time frame was incredibly short between the crash, Atwood seeing her, and the police arriving. Just minutes.
And his role as a school bus driver. Would he really risk helping someone evade police? Seems unlikely to many.
Plus, the fact remains he did call 911. That kind of contradicts the idea he was trying to cover for, doesn't it?
It does make it less plausible. The Reddit thread also mentions Witness A.
Right, another motorist who passed by reportedly saw the Saturn around 7:37 p.m., maybe saw Maura too.
But even within that Reddit discussion, there's debate about that 7:37 p.m. time. Was it exact or just an estimate?
Exactly, and it just highlights how tricky eyewitness timings can be, especially years later, relying on memory.
So let's look at the official investigation. The timeline gives a good overview. Initially, it was local police, search dogs, helicopters.
And Maura's father, Fred, got involved very, very quickly. He's been a relentless advocate for finding her ever since.
The search has expanded massively over the following days and weeks. State police joined, tons of volunteers, cadaver dogs, dive teams checked nearby water.
Yeah, the timeline hits the key points. New Hampshire State Police took lead responsibility in 2005. In 2017, they excavated near the crash site based on cadaver dog alerts.
But found nothing.
Found nothing. Then in 2019, the FBI launched a web page for tips.
Seems like federal interest ramped up over the last few years.
Yeah.
The timeline notes increased federal involvement between 2018 and 2020. Her case was added to Novus,
which is the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, a big database.
and then April 2021, the FBI launched an official Maura Murray tip portal. They clearly consider the case suspicious, unresolved.
And despite all that effort, decades of searching, Maura Murray is still missing. The case remains open with the NH State Police Cold Case Unit. There's still a $5,000 reward out there.
It's just baffling. Now, the family's perspective is obviously crucial. The news article we looked at really delves into this. Maura's sister, Julie, started a podcast.
The Untold Story of Maura Murray launched February 2024. Her goal, she says, is to show who Maura really was and also share the family's theories.
And their main theory is foul play.
Yes, Julie explicitly states she believes Maura met with foul play.
The family really emphasizes Maura's distress in those days beforehand, the upsetting call, her sister's relapse, the car accident.
But they also point to things like her turning in homework, calling about rentals, having the accident forms, things that suggest she planned on coming back.
Right. It's this contradiction that makes it so hard. And Julie has been quite critical of the initial police work.
Yeah, alleging incompetence, missed leads. She questions why certain people weren't looked into more, like the condo owner Maura called, a classmate she'd IM'd.
There was a handwritten phone number found in the car, too, apparently.
Right. And Julie questions why the search that first night didn't go east from the crash site, only west.
The family speculates about possibilities. Stranger abduction, maybe Maura getting into a car with the wrong person. It highlights their ongoing pain and just the relentless search for answers.
Understandably so.
Going back to that Reddit thread for a second.
Yeah.
Besides the Atwood theory, it also touches on just how many different ways people interpret the witness timings, the police actions.
And alternative ideas get mentioned, like maybe she sought shelter at a nearby house, the Merritt's place, for instance. It just shows the sheer volume of speculation out there when you don't have concrete answers.
And this is where understanding things like forensic analysis and eyewitness testimony becomes really, really relevant based on our other sources.
Exactly. That piece on forensic analysis and car accidents, it explains how studying the vehicle damage can offer real clues about the crash itself. How severe was it? What kind of impact?
And Julie, in the news article, mentioned the family hired their own reconstructionist.
Who apparently found damage inconsistent with just hitting a tree, which was part of the initial police report detail. That kind of discrepancy. It really underscores why thorough forensic work is so vital.
Then there's the eyewitness memory aspect. That article from Courtroom Sciences was fascinating. It reminds us that memory isn't a perfect recording.
Not at all. Factors like stress during the event, what the witness was actually focusing on, how memory naturally changes and distorts over time, all of this can affect accuracy.
So when we look at Butch Atwood's account, or Witness A's, we have to consider these factors, right?
Absolutely. It's a crucial lens. Their memories are likely genuine, but maybe not perfectly precise, especially regarding timing or specific details. The different reported times might just be normal memory fallibility, not necessarily deception.
It's interesting how these different threads connect. The Reddit discussion debates timelines based on witness accounts.
Well, the science tells us those accounts might have inherent limitations.
And the family questions the initial crash assessment based on their expert.
Highlighting the importance of that detailed forensic analysis we read about, it all intertwines.
Okay, so let's try to summarize the key undisputed facts we've pulled from this deep dive. Maura Murray disappeared after a single car crash on February 9th, 2004.
She had definitely shown some unusual, maybe concerning behavior in the days right before. Packing her car, the emails, the trip planning.
And despite massive search efforts spanning over 2 decades now, her whereabouts are completely unknown. She remains missing.
And so many critical questions are still hanging out there. What was her actual state of mind? Why was she driving up there to that specific remote spot?
What happened in those minutes or hours right after the crash? Was she truly alone when she left the car? Or did she meet someone? Run into someone?
We just don't know.
This case is just, it's such a complex web. Information, speculation, family grief, ongoing mystery. All layered together, as we've seen across all these different sources.
It really demonstrates the challenge of cold cases, especially those with so many conflicting pieces and missing information.
Which leads us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to consider. In a case with this many unanswered questions, this many different accounts, what single piece of information stands out to you as the most critical, and why?
Yeah, think about that. And consider how understanding the, let's say, the fallibility of human memory on one hand, and the objective potential of forensic science on the other, How might those things reshape your understanding of what could have happened on that cold February night in 2004? What are your thoughts?